that we've always, when anyone's talked about the Vampire Diaries or written about it, one thing that comes up a lot is the really fast pace of the plots on the Vampire Diaries. What do you do? What's the process for keeping that going at such a rapid pace and making sure the stories are actually told but then move along somewhere?
Well, we have, it's funny, the structure of that, or the outcome of that, really accidentally formed as a result of the act break structure, which, act break is when you go to commercials. So on most networks now, certainly ABC does it and CW does it, there's a grand total of 6 breaks. So you're basically every 6.5 minutes going to commercial and wanting your audience to make sure they come back. And the general rule of television storytelling, especially when you're telling genre stuff, is you slam them out and yank them back in. And so at first it was just, well, we can't have crappy act outs. And that early in the series just set the tone for, well, that was good. Ooh, that was really good. Escalating everything, every act. Created this roller coaster, wham bam, thank you ma'am kind of storytelling. We certainly didn't set out to do it that way, but the instant we recognized it, we realized, that is what we should be doing here. Every scene matters, I watch a lot of TV, I'm a huge fan of television, and you can always tell the ones where it's sort of oh, and here's that storyline that just exists on its own, of people sitting and talking, and nothing happens, and that's nice on other shows, but we never do that. I would say 95% of our scenes directly lead you to the next piece of the story. Even if you're having a beautiful emotional scene between two people, it is either informing or somehow twisting the structure of the plot, and that's our rule. That we, sometimes we break it because sometimes you earn and deserve those great little quiet moments, but that's how we roll when we're doing it.
Can you tell us about the brothers' reaction to what's happening?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, the best thing about those brothers is that they love her very deeply, and in spite of moves made or arguments had over the years about her being a vampire, or their point of view on it, they both know that that's the one thing that she never wanted. That the girl who loves her family so deeply and loves so deeply, if anybody deserves a human life and to grow up and have babies, like she said in season 2, and if anyone deserves it, it's her, and that's just been taken away from her. And so I think in a weird way, she's going to be a little bit more pragmatic about it than they are, because I think that they're both going to be very set on how will she get through this and how can we save her from herself. And both of them had very different experiences as vampires, as you guys know, and it's not going to put them on the same page. They're not going to be on the same page at all in the beginning, and that's one of the tragedies of Elena becoming a vampire, is that it took the brothers who were on this really beautiful path finding their way back to each other, and they finally really said, bros before hoes, basically, to paraphrase, and now we're going to see that tested a little bit.
Because Elena obviously doesn't want to be a vampire, is she going to seek out something that might eventually turn her back on him?
Well, I mean, I think that, the first episode is very much about we have got to exhaust every single possible opportunity and dig deep into every old grimoire and do anything we can, and the outcome of that will set the stage for what happens moving forward. And as we know, there's if there was any kind of way to get out of being a vampire, I think that somebody would have brought it up or wanted it or had it. So we'll see.
Speaking of Elena, she's probably going to be struggling with being a vampire. Is Jeremy safe with her, or could they possibly move into the Salvatores so that he's not by himself, along with a fledgling vampire?
I think that that's definitely a concern. That shacking up with a potential vampire who may or may not be able to control her urges could be difficult. But we don't have any plans to move them out of that house. I feel like that house represents family and neighborhood and Mystic Falls in a way, and the Gilbert family in a way that we're not ready to just say goodbye to yet.
How is Matt gonna react? He's the only normal one, so how has this changed the dynamic of Matt with everybody else now?
Well, what's funny is Matt was always the ordinary guy, and now in his ordinariness, that's a word, he has by default become extraordinary. So in his own way, him being the only normal one has become very unique and very special, and I think he's going to start to feel the burden and the pressure of how can I find my way in this world, and how can I earn my life that she saved for me, and how can I become a superhero in my heart, and within my actions, and even if I don't have the power to do anything about it.
You've said that we didn't see Joseph Morgan's body alive. So I mean, obviously Klaus is going to play a role with Tyler. So what can we?
You can expect Klaus to play a role with Tyler. Joseph will be back, and Klaus will be back. And Joseph as Klaus will be back sooner than later.
Do you have any sort of long-term goals for how long you want the series to last, where you want it to go to, or is it sort of, are you keeping it open?
Well, funnily enough, it's this great myth that TV writers have any control whatsoever over how long their show goes or doesn't go. I think we all, when you get to season 4, you're pretty sure there's going to be a season 5. And because of the way the business works, the odds are good there's a season 6. The end of 6 is when everything could change. That's when actors, contracts come up. That's when things shift. The show gets more expensive. That's when people start making those decisions. So we always have looked at it like a 6-year show. We have very little control over whether it goes on and on and on. And I think what you do is you protect the longevity of storytelling without spinning your wheels, and we don't do that. We don't like to do that. So I look at it as at the end of season 6 we'll be like, here's what we meant to do, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Speak more past from the beginning until now. I mean, is there anything that you're gonna kind of pull the rug under our feet, so to speak, with any really big changes or new characters that are coming out that you're expecting something that's shocking or maybe coming?
Well, hopefully everything that we do is a surprise in some way. I think that this year, this year we definitely have some good and interesting surprises built in, especially as we get to the end of the season. Some definite things that when I talk about it to people, to my, to Kevin or to the studio or the network, and they go, oh, whoa, and you always are happy when you get that reaction. There's gonna be a lot of intense moves this year, and in the same way that we weren't really afraid to go balls out, excuse my language, with Stefan as the Ripper, we're not really afraid to take chances and take risks on Elena's journey and with everyone, especially thematically as everybody's figuring out who they are and who they're meant to be as they approach graduation and making decisions about what their life is going to be as they move forward.
What's Bonnie's journey going to be like this season? It was a little dark.
Yeah, well, Bonnie, look, for Bonnie to do what she did at the end of the season, that tapped into some serious dark places, and she's going to learn very quickly that those dark places are easy to tap into and not so good to tap into, and Bonnie's gonna have a really rough journey, but hopefully a really beautiful journey, because I think that she's kind of through circumstance ended up on her own. She lost her grandmother, who could have been a mentor to her. She doesn't really have someone to look to and say, hey, can you help me be this, or help me learn this, and I would like to introduce somebody this year who can be a little bit of a guardian and guidance in the witch world to Bonnie, to kind of help her understand the extent of her power and all the consequences that come attached to it.
You guys are bringing in some hunters this year?
Yeah, we brought in a new character called Connor, who we'll meet early on, and He's going to be played by the actor Todd Williams. And he just shows up, kind of kicking ass and taking names. And where he's different than, Hunterland that we've dabbled in the past is he doesn't seem to be in it necessarily to protect the secret or to cover up the town from knowing. He's more like, shoot first, ask questions later, and he's pretty hardcore, and he takes a lot of our characters by surprise in just how hardcore he really is.
Do you plan to expand on Jeremy's power any further in this season?
Well, Jeremy, which power?
Well, his ability to control people.
Truth be told, yes, that's his special skill, so to speak. He can put it on his college applications. But really, it's going to be more about him, especially with the new hunter coming to town, and Jeremy, who comes from a family of people who have committed themselves to being anti-vampire. How can he play one side against the other? How can he protect his sister's secret and yet still learn some tricks of the trade from this hunter? And so we'll be focusing on that more than we will be dabbling in the ghost world right off. Mostly because that was our story for last year. But his ability has not left us. It has not gone away. It's just not his focus.
Do you have a lot of on the set and off the set any big pranksters, or are you a prankster for the cast?
I'm not a prankster at all because I think pranks are terrible because I feel bad for the person that's getting pranked because it's basically predicated upon humiliating somebody. That being said, in season one and into season 2, Marco Siega was like this diabolical, nasty prankster, and he got Matt Davis probably better than anybody has, and he got Michael Trevino, and he got Zach Rohrig in ways that you just were like, oh, that's good and that's so evil. And then Nina tried to get him and had him so good. But then when he found out he figured out that she was pranking him, so he turned the tables on her and nailed her to the wall. So unfortunately, I'd love to tell you the details, but they're very inappropriate. But it was great.
Julie, sorry, I'm back here. And I'm like,
no, sorry.
No, that's all right. I follow the feedback you get on Twitter all the time.
Oh yes. So do I.
And I'm curious, does fan outreach kind of change the way you plot stories, or have you just decided you got to follow your own path?
It definitely leaves a loud imprint in our creative brains, and then we have to work very hard as creative people to fill that in and to smooth it out so that we could say on the road, whoa, I just dug into some crazy metaphor. It's difficult not to hear it because it's right there in front of you, and it's very, very passionate. But you also have no idea where it's coming from. Is it coming from one person with 150 names? Is it coming from a 50-year-old, a 12-year-old? Is it coming from one small faction of people? And so what I try to do is every time I find myself getting defensive or distracted by that passion, I'll go to my friends who watch the show, and I'll say, so what do you watch the show for? Why do you love the show? And they're like, it's just awesome. And it's great stories. And I say, no, but really, I mean, do you love, I love Damon. Damon's amazing. It's so great. Well, how do you feel? Well, Stefan, I love Stefan, And it takes me back to what I was saying in the panel earlier. It's just that, I remember watching Love Triangles as a TV fan and kind of rooting for both sides. And so I think many people, not all, obviously, are like that, and so I try to stay on their path, and tell the right stories for the characters and for the show. I mean, the show is a love triangle that is meant to run for a very long time. It's not always going to be the driving force of the show, but it is the central premise is 2 vampires in love with one girl move to a small town, and that's our show. That's the Alcatraz of our Alcatraz, the island of our lust. So, you know, we've got to keep it alive and keep it honest and keep it, you know, fluid, and that's what we definitely have to do. And I don't think necessarily people who just want it to happen understand necessarily that it's a long marathon, you know.
What's the time lapse between the seasons?
Between this season, it's instant, it's immediate. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's several hours later.